Hey everyone, this is Ill Factor from BeatAcademy.com, and in this video, I'm going to share with you some music production tips while recreating Drake's Don't Matter to Me featuring Michael Jackson. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So let's go ahead and lock in the BPM of our project. We're going to be at 103 BPMs. I'm going to get started on the drums by first dragging and dropping a percussive loop. So I'm going to go into my Beat Academy sample pack, and I'm going to go into It Doesn't Matter to Me folder, and click the Ill Thin Tambourine. Now this is a tambourine percussive loop which is accenting every quarter note. Now this sample pack is a sample pack that I've put together from some of my projects over the past year, and it's including construction kits, loops, one-hits, samples that you can use in your projects in any DAW, and it's yours absolutely free. And as a matter of fact, I've actually just updated the sample pack to include the sounds that I'm going to be using in this video. As you can see here, It Doesn't Matter to Me folder. And that's where I'm getting the sounds from for today's video. So you can download this by just clicking the link below in the description box. This pack is also 100% royalty free, so feel free to use any of the sounds in this pack in your projects today. Alright, let's take a look at the drum pattern. Now let's do a couple things to add just a little bit more life to the drums that we have programmed. So first thing I want to do is we notice that we have two claps, clap 1 and 2. And if you picture two people clapping at the same time in real life, they don't really clap exactly spot on at the same time. So you get a little bit of a flam. One person's maybe a little ahead of the other. So that's what I'm going to recreate here. So let's take clap 2. I'm going to click this row over here, and that's going to select all the notes in that row. You can see the moving dotted lines indicating that you're selecting that whole row. Once I've done that, I'm going to click the note and then hit my command key so that I can bypass the grid and just nudge this slightly to the left. And the more drastic you go to the left, the more drastic the flam. Right? So let's go right back over here and see what that sounds like. Now this is what it sounds like when it was spot on. It's pretty stiff. Now when we bring it back, really helps that clap come to life. And then next we have the snare drum here. So I'm going to go to the snare sound itself. I'm going to shorten the snare sound by just trimming the sample end right over here. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and adjust the volume velocity. And let's go ahead and set it over to 40%. Now what this is going to do, this is going to allow us to adjust the velocity of these samples. So depending on the actual velocity where we have it set, will determine the actual strength and intensity of the volume. So what we want to do is add more of a ghost note. So I'm going to take this first snare here, and I'm going to lower the velocity, and you can see it lighten in the shade of color. And then we'll leave this one a little bit stronger. And as you can see, as you lower the velocity, you hear the volume of that snare drum lower as well. So it should give us the effect of this being a little bit lighter in performance, and then this note being a little stronger. And so when you do that, it accents this note, and this note stands out a lot more, as opposed to just having both notes at the same velocity. So let's lower this one down. And we're going to do the same thing with this note over here. And we'll grab this one and lower it as well. So now that we have those set, we can go ahead and repeat the same process for all the other notes. Let's lower the velocity and lower this one as well. Now, depending on how we have this velocity volume knob set, if it's set to 100, that means that it's going to react a little bit more drastically depending on the velocity settings we have for those notes. So if you want the velocity changes to be more drastic, then you would go over here and set the velocity knob to a higher number. If you want the velocity changes to be less drastic, well then give it a less number value. So I'll leave it at 44%. And that gives a little bit more life and movement to those snare drums. Now let's go ahead and give the percussion a little bit more texture. So I'm going to use another loop that's in the sample pack, some finger cymbals, and lower that down. Just give some tonal texture to the loop. And then there's also this percussion, this melodic percussive, more like a marimba action going on there. So what I want to do is actually we're going to recreate that by using Ableton Live's instrument Collision. So here, let's just grab a Collision, throw it down into a MIDI track, and let's go ahead and paste the pattern. So this would be the pattern here. But what we're going to do is change the actual resonance or the type of resonator that's using. Instead of beam, we're going to head over here to marimba, and we're going to shorten the decay time and the material. So let's lower that down. And the less material value gives more of a wooden. So the way I like to think of the less material value makes it more organic, and the more makes it more metallic, things like that. So let's go over here. And let's add some brightness to it and some harmonics. And here you can actually just mess around. Let's lower the stiffness a little. So it's almost like as if the attack was being brought up a little bit. And let's set this over to mono. And now what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of reverb to that. So let's go to our audio effects folder. Let's put reverb and just dial back the dry and wet. And eliminate the high end of that reverb so it gives a nice little warmth. And then incorporate that into So let's go ahead and bring these two tracks into the actual drum group. Put the drum rack first. What I like to do is add a little bit of echo delay on those marimbas just to give it a little bit more movement. So let's go from dotted to notes and 16th. Let's go back to 8th note. And just filter out the lower end. Alright, so now on the drum bus itself, what we're going to do is just load an EQ and load the actual drum bus plugin that's featured in Ableton Live 10. Next, let's focus our attention on the bass line. And for this, I'm going to use Ableton Live's analog. But you can follow along using any 2 oscillator synth in whichever DAW that you're currently using. The principles can be applied either way. So let's set both oscillators to a sawtooth. And what we're going to do is just slightly detune one oscillator from the other. So I'll start at the oscillator 2. And when you slightly detune it, you have that nice little chorusy effect that's happening. And then once you've done that, go ahead and lower the frequency filter. And let's go ahead and drop the envelope of that frequency to 0. And go to the amp envelope and also set the envelope to the velocity to 0. That way, it won't change depending on how hard you play the MIDI notes on your keyboard. So we're going to lower the frequency, and then we're going to build up a little bit of the resonance. And since this is our bass line, we need to make sure that we head over to the volume and set the voices from 8 to mono. So now that we have the tone, let's go ahead and add a little bit of glide, and that's where we're going to get that nice gliding from one note to the next. So let me just go ahead and paste the pattern here. So I might need to nudge this note a little over here, but because these notes are overlapping, that's what's going to cause a note to glide from one note to the next. So depending on how much value you add to the time it takes for the glide will determine how drastic that bend will be. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of saturation here. We're going to saturate this a little bit, bring up the drive, and bring down the output. So if I wanted more of that bend, just increase the time there. All right, that takes care of the bass. Now let's head over to the chords. Now when I listen to the reference, the first thing that comes into mind is an 80s synth, either strings or pad that has some kind of filtering on it, and I'm just visualizing what it really looks like to me. And then so if that's where I'm at, I think a good place to start would be using Ableton Live's brand new Poly synth that they just incorporated in their new update. It's a Max for Live plugin, but it sounds great. And so here is just a basic synth, and what we're going to use to recreate that vintage 80s synth pad type of vibe. So here are the chords. And now let's give this a little bit of shaping. So we're using a sawtooth. So here's the sawtooth knob. Combine that a little bit with some pulse. And the reason for that is it's shaping the tone. If it was just all pulse, it's more squarey. And saw is really where the strings, the string sound, pad sound is going to lean more towards a sawtooth. And then let's go ahead and mess along with this, where it says cross mod, right? We can add some noise to that as well. And the lower end sub, let's just have a sine wave. Sorry, I like the sawtooth better. Now what we're going to do is just go ahead and use the high pass filter, including the sub on, and just eliminate some of the bottom end there. What we want to do is just use the amp release to extend the release so that it's more of so the notes play longer after they've actually been released, and let's raise the attack to give more of a pad type of feel. Let's bring up the color a little bit. And now what's really special about this is this chorus section. It reminds me of the Juno 106 chorus. So we can go ahead and activate that, and it'll give this nice lush width to the sound. And if we activate the glide, that'll actually allow the notes to do a nice little bend before they start to play. Cool, so now let's go ahead and incorporate just a little bit of some sound design and processing. Let's put a filter over that, the auto filter, and just take away some of that high end, because the reference has the chords faintly in the back, and a filter can accomplish that. You know, the more highs you take away, the farther back in the mix that sound might become. And then let's go ahead and use some reverb on top of that as well. So let's see where we're at so far. We can go ahead and bring some more of the filter up. Bring the decay time a little bit, a little more pre-delay, and eliminate some of the... Let's see what that sounds like with everything else, including the bass line. Might need to adjust the release so that we have a little bit more of the notes overlapping each other. And let's lower the filters, frequency down. Now what I'm going to do is just layer that with an analog. So we'll go back to the analog, And just to make things easier, let's just head over to, let's type in string in our search window here and narrow down to just some analog patches. The synth strings pad. We'll just go ahead and drag and drop that and copy this pattern over and just kind of blend the two together. So now we're going to go ahead and just highlight the filter and the reverb, holding the option button, just dragging those two as well. What I'm going to do is go back to the bass line and just raise the filter frequency up so that the bass notes are more dominant in the forefront. So I'm going to raise the filter frequency of the bass a little bit so that the notes can be up more upfront. And since the strings are more the higher, we can open those up a little bit. And let's just raise the release so they just get held out a little bit more. And there you go. Well, I hope this video has been helpful for you, and as my gift to you for watching this video, I'd love to send you a sample pack including construction kits, loops, one-shots, transition effects, all yours absolutely free. And you can use this in any DAW that you're currently using. And the best part is they're 100% royalty free. Now I've gone ahead and updated this sample pack to include the sounds that we've used in this video. You can find them in the It Does Matter to Me folder. So all the sounds that we're using, with the exception of some of the preset stock sounds in Ableton Live, can be found in this folder. So just click the link below in the description box. You can also visit www.beatacademy.com/pack and download your sample pack today. I'll see you next time.